Our next stop here, of all places, is Kirkland, Tennessee. You might not know where in Tennessee that's at, but that's in southern Tennessee, just across the line from Alabama. Well, I think about, it was 28, 30 miles from Huntsville, Alabama. And it exists much the same as it existed back then. Let me briefly show you what it looks like today. Well, as you can see right here, there's this here bunch of grain bins. And there is a place where you come in, weigh your trucks, and there's a granary and grain dryers and what have you. Because now, still, not so much as it was back then, it was highly agricultural. We were farmers. Yep. The only other thing it had, of course, that big old propane tank's still there. It was there back in the day. And here was the little country store, where, most mornings all the farmers would gather, grab a cup of hot coffee. Yeah, and come lunch, might come on up here, and they had a sandwich counter. Yeah, it was just a few boards nailed on top of some posts, and here you could get a fine sandwich. Ham and cheese, bologna cheese, and onion with mustard. Stuff of that nature. Souse meat. Yeah. It was just down home country. And the store remains here, which I'm quite surprised. Though it's had some new siding put on it and a metal roof. Back in the day, it had the old plank batten board siding, all grayed and weathered. Yep, with a big old potbelly stove in the middle to keep you warm. Yeah, and we would all come in the mornings, all the old timers and farmers, chat a while, drink our coffee. And hey, in the mornings they also had biscuits. They surely did. Just plain buttered biscuits and ham, biscuits and bologna, sausage biscuits, sausage and egg, maybe some cheese, things of that nature. I really, truly enjoyed the life. But it wasn't that here, but down the road, where Bellevue Road that is, would have my very first real farm. So now, we're going to take a trip down the Bellevue Road. As you can see, and we'll just expand up here, but we won't take all your time. And what you're going to notice, first off, is the Line Family Farms. For whatever reason, it's temporarily closed. They were big-time farmers. But they only farmed two things. This was known as Pea Ridge. From all the way back to the Depression. Throughout the Depression and beyond, it was known for two things, because the soil was poor and quite rocky. And the USDA and all of them and pretty much set up farming here, or helping the farmers, especially during the Great Dust Bowl, which also happened during the Great Depression, to farm better. And you can see the contour lines in this field. You know what? Those weren't put in by farmers. They were put in by something was called the CCC. And if I remember correctly, that was the Civilian Conservation Corps. Surely it was. You can look it up and see all the amazing things they did. Yeah. But this area was known for not only raising cattle, that was one primary animal they raised, and they also had their pigs and their horses. Many people had goats back then. Yes, they did. But primary crops were two things: sweet potatoes and field peas. Yeah, field peas. Because here in the South, it's hard to grow the sweet green peas. But field peas do quite well, which also hold the soil, build up the soil with new nitrogen and other vital nutrients. But where my place was, we just focus on down. It was right here. You can see the large pond. This was a spring-fed pond, I might add, and the spring flowed out of this corner right here. Surely it did. We'll orientate it so you can better see it. So this here northwest corner was where a nice cold, the water was so clear, and what you can't see is the topography. Yep, we were on the top of the ridge, so this was flat. But all around, off the ridge, was extremely high hills and low hollers. Yes, my friends, this was hill and holler country. And it was right here on Bellevue Road. You can see the top of the old farmhouse, as well as the top of my old barn. Now the place has been left to grow up quite a bit since the time that I purchased it. And this had been a farm owned by the brother of Garner Hopkins, which would become my mentor for farming commercially here. He owned the place right up here, right here, just to the northwest of me. That was his big fine barn here, which somebody's taking great care of. You can tell the whole entire barn roof has been replaced or cool sealed. He had a fine brick home with a nice front porch. And at the time we bought the place and moved into our place, he basically just raised cattle. And they were getting on up there. Garner was in his early 70s, him and his wife. His kids had all moved away. No one wanted to continue the life of being a farmer. So he sort of latched on to me, and as his wife did my wife. Yeah, this nice pond here, which is actually like a small lake. Now another interesting fact here about this pond right here was it was actually built of the CCC. Yep, the Civilian Conservation Corps. They did a lot of that in farms. They surely did. And it had a fine dam. It had a concrete spillway. It had gates put in the spillway to dump the water, drain the pond. It was just jam up place. Surely it was. Along with contouring the land, I think they planted 3 billion trees as well during the time the CCC was active. And at some point in time, they even got up to 5% of the male population was working for the Civilian Conservation Corps. You can look all that up if you're interested and see it yourself. But this farm benefited it as well. Now, the original farm, like I say, was owned by Garner Hopkins' brother. Yeah, he had passed away. And the original farm went all the way back up through here, all the way up to this tree line. And it was row crops, but it was also cattle, primarily a dairy farm. Yeah. Now when I bought it, I didn't buy all this land up here. The portion of land I bought was right along here. That fronted the road, went to the curve on the west side, and extended out on the eastern side to just right about where this now driveway is at. It didn't exist back then. Yes. And this was my bottom fields. And of course here on the northern end was all bordered by a slate rock bottom, cold running creek. Yes, it was. And it would be this here woodlot that was to the west, and to the west of the pond, and even to the north, down to the road, that I would use to cut wood to heat the home. The home was totally heated by wood. This field here, out to here, was what I referred to as my bottom land, the best land I had. To the right of the house and to the north of the house, that's where I had intensive gardens planted, or market farming, you might say. It had a plethora of vegetables, tomatoes, primarily, we were big in tomatoes, string beans, okra, squash, all of that kinds of stuff. And it all depended on the time of year and when we planted what. We had cabbages. We had lettuces. I can't even remember everything we had. And it was all organic and all meant, because we really thought back then that people would be big on it. Yet, little did I know, in this time period of life, the very early 80s, people weren't all too big on organic. They were big on prices. But I would supply the 3 local grocery stores and a local farmers co-op. But down in this area, I would plant such things as my sweet corn. Yeah. Now, not the sweet corn that's prevalent today. It would be the queen of sweet corn back then. It's what people really did enjoy. Silver Queen, you might remember that. It just had a touch of sweetness, but still that corny flavor, where now the sweet corn's grown in gardens, or your sugar enhanced, and your super sugar enhanced. They're extremely sweet, and as they get sweeter, they tend to lack the corn taste. But I also had field peas, I had cover crops, winter rye, winter wheat. I had it going on. But not only that, down in here in front of the barn, we planted apple orchards and pear orchards. There was one winter, I ordered from Starks 500 apple trees. Oh yeah! A grievous undertaking for one man and his wife. Also got 100 pear trees. We also got apricots and peaches, but memory evades me as to how many much we got, as well as sweet cherry trees. The whole plan was to not only have our organic vegetables, but our organic fruits of a wide variety. We even had a large strawberry planting. When I mean large, a couple of acres. The whole place, if I remember, was 14.96 acres, all in total. It's sad to see that it's all grown up. Surely it is. And we're going to drop down here and take a look at it from street view. And you can see what I mean. And here we are at the driveway entrance. And you can clearly see the Slate Rock Bottom Creek that flowed along the western and northern boundary of the farm, with the driveway that went right through it. Now, there was never a bridge here. And over the years we lived here, at times that would become problematic. 90% of the year, it was like you see it now. Right here at the driveway would be anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of water flowing across to maybe 6. More than easily traversed with a car, pickup truck, or tractor. Yep. All along this creek was lined with a type of birch tree they call a river birch. It had a paper thin, sort of beigeish brown bark that peeled off continuously as the tree grew. You can see over here The bark, and this is a sycamore tree. In the woods, the woodlot contained hickory, oaks, sycamores, elms, and other species that made fantastic firewood to heat the home. And I wish I could take you up and show you the home, but you can see it up there. It was a large farmhouse, and it had a front porch that went all the way across it. And the house was bricked. It wasn't always bricked. In fact, we bought this from another young couple that had also came up with the back of the land before us. They purchased it and started remodeling the home. And they overbricked the whole home. Not only that, on the inside, they gutted it out, and they had installed a massive fireplaces. The guy was an engineer too, and he was using technology that dated all the way back to the Slavic states and Russia, straight out of Mother Earth News. And he'd built a massive 8-foot by 8-foot mass to contain the flues from not only a fireplace, that was large fireplace in the living room, but one that was in the master bedroom too. Yes, he did. The whole concept there. And if you look up the way Russians cooked and heated their homes back in the day, and many still do, you can see videos here on YouTube. As you burnt wood and had fires, that big massive mass heats up and radiates heat and keeps the whole entire house warm. And that's exactly what his plan was. But you see, something happened in their lives. Either he or she really wasn't up to the task of remodeling the place and bringing the farm back to life. So we bought it fairly cheap. I think all total we paid $22,000 for the nearly 15 acres of land, the old farmhouse and barn. The farm had a well. Well, it was a spring house, fed by a natural spring. It didn't have a lot of water. It was enough to drink, wash dishes, and flush a toilet. Yeah, and that would have to be addressed. And even then, it'd get quite low. But it was fantastic, crystal clear water. The best water I've ever drank in my entire life. But like I say, the house was pretty rough inside when me and the wife showed up. We needed to get her ready for us to move in. Yeah, so we retained the home and harvest for a while we came up here every available hour we had and started the remodeling of the place. When the time we bought it, even the driveway had small saplings and shrubs growing up in it, and that would be my first task. So we could even get to the front porch, with vehicles and such. But when you walked in the house, you walked right into the living room, which was on the left. On the right wall was a massive fireplace with a 4-foot wide hearth. Well, a little more, because later I'd be fitting 4-foot logs in that thing to heat it during the first winter. The same was true on the master bedroom side. As soon as you entered the living room from the front door, you could either go through the living room on into the massive kitchen, or you could take an immediate right and go into a very large, spacious master bedroom. And on the left wall that adjoined the living room wall was a massive stone wall and fireplace, where the one on the living room side was done in brick. Fancy for the living room. It also had a large, over 4-foot wide fireplace and hearth. The second story wasn't ever finished, even with the original owners. but they still lived up there because they had more children. It just had floors down, exposed beams and rafters. That's pretty much the way it was. Since this place had actually became a farm during the pioneer days and had remained so all this time. But the master bedroom was spacious. You had that large fireplace, and to get to that upstairs there was a door to the right of the fireplace on that central wall. See, the fireplace or the staircase to the upstairs was hidden. You open that door, and inside there was a staircase to the second story. But like I said, you'd walk through the living room, go into the massive kitchen, which had windows on the west side and all along the north side, which now, I'm sure at one time, looked out northwards. But over time, in addition, a back covered in porch was added to the house, which also had windows all the way across the north wall, the final wall of the house. But the kitchen also had a unique feature. The young couple that had owned this before we took it over had installed a fireplace of sorts in the kitchen too. It was a smaller fireplace, but it was set up for cooking and for smoking meats, complete with cast iron doors on the fire pit and ash box below. Oh, I was so tickled to see it. What another engineer had come up with. Of course, it was totally gutted other than that, down to the bare concrete floor. To the right of the kitchen, you'd walk through a door, and to the left would have been the utility room, where the laundry pair sat. There was all the plumbing and electrical, but basically bare stud walls. And you entered the second bedroom. There, very spacious bedroom, as large as the master. Eventually that would become the shared bedroom for my two newly born young children. Yes, it was here in Kirkland, Tennessee, where my children would be born. Both my firstborn Ashley and my secondborn James. Be born right up in Fayetteville, Tennessee, at Lincoln County Community Hospital they were. Yep. Even though they call Alabama their home and where they're from, in Tallahassee, specifically where they're from, they're actually from Fayetteville, Tennessee. Of course, I must admit, they probably don't have a lot of memories of this time on this farm. They were very young. But like I said, off of that bedroom, which would become their bedroom, was a small bathroom. About the size I got really here in this house on Monroe Street. It was about as wide as a tub or a little bit more, which it had. They had actually started putting it all in. It had a nice vanity and a toilet. Yeah, you could get two people in there as long as you were careful. Another feature of the bathroom was it had a door to go outside. Yeah, which would become convenient at times working on the farm. So the first thing I did before we'd move in is we remodeled and finished out the living room, the master bedroom, the second bedroom, and the bathroom. We finished out the utility room so we could have the laundry pair. This would become our kitchen as well. Now, you see, I sort of got a little bit sidetracked on continuing the house restoration. I redid the roof, repaired all the tin, recool sealed the roof, and did all that too. But I wanted to get to farming, clearing back the land, get my veggies grown. That was my passion. Thankfully, I had a neighbor, Garner Hopkins, that fall would come over and plow my fields. Yeah, disc them down too, and that would give me my start. That winter would be one of two of the harshest winters I've ever went through in my life. Little did we know. Thankfully, while we were preparing the land, working on the house, and all that, I had cut and fell and sectioned at least 6 cords of wood and stacked it by the house. Thankfully, because what would happen that year would be one of the coldest years on record since the mid-60s. Brutally cold, with no other heat source in the house but the fireplaces. Now, I didn't know a thing about fireplaces back then. Didn't have a clue. You started a fire, you chunked wood in it, kept the blazing fire. I didn't realize open fireplaces were extremely inefficient. You could be standing right by them and be burning up hot, and your backside would be cold. Yeah, we burned a lot of wood that first winter. In fact, I had to continue to cut with snow on the ground, me and the wife, in our coveralls. It was a tough winter. And see, all the time we also worked at the plant, Cheeseboro Ponds. We worked nights, which I thought during my farming career that was rather advantageous. We'd get home about 1 in the morning. I'd catch me 4 hours of sleep, and I could get out on my land, where I could work it till about noon, and then shower and drive on to work. Every single day, 5 to 6 days a week, we did. But yeah, I'd also renovated the barn, repaired its roof, and found a gold mine of fertilizer. 'Cause the barn, I guess with Garner's brother getting up in age, he didn't clean it out often, and there was like 4 foot of brown gold sitting there that had been composted thoroughly for only God knows how many years. I would actually dig that all back down the dirt, and that would be my fertilizer that I'd spread across the lands to start growing the coming year. Yep, life was good. Oh, we were working hard. There ain't no doubt. But we got really into growing. Like I said, I've picked more strawberries and ate more, and the kids just loved them. Their faces would be all red, and so would their hands. I've got pictures tucked away, and I wish I had the time now to include them, but I don't. They were happy just as we picked strawberries, Debbie and I. They'd be out there shoving them in their mouth as fast as they could go. They were just little things then, 2 and 3. Yep, Ashy and Jamo, as they called each other back in them days. I wish it was still the same. Sadly, it's not. And like I say, one of our biggest crops and best sellers was tomatoes, all staked up, which amazed me grew 8+ feet high. Had to be doing something right, thankfully for Mother Earth News and the Rodale Press. I even had my own produce boxes made up, and the name of the farm that I came up with was Willow Springs Farms. That was also because willows were mixed in with birch along the creek, and that was right on the boxes, with a plethora of produce that would soon fill them. But tomatoes were the hugest crop and best selling and highest profit. But they would later get filled with zucchini and yellow squash and green beans, cabbages, turnips. Surely they would. Other times we would have winter squash, acorn, and butternut, and even pumpkins too. But when the weather started to turn colder, I would be putting in my cover crops of winter rye and winter wheat to build my ground for the next season to come. It was intense, I'll tell you that. But I was young, the wife was young, and I loved it greatly. As I'd come to find out, as our lives progressed, she wasn't as big on it as she thought she was when we were all sitting at the place before, dreaming about how it would be. And that's something I'll bring up now, kids. The dreams are fantastic. The planning's great. You can do anything in your dreams, but when it comes down to the back-breaking toil and everyday work, see, farming ain't a 9 to 5, nor is it 5 days a week. Once you start it, there's things to do every day, 7 days a week. Bear that in mind. But here I would get my first 2 cows too, that would move with me yet to another farm. Surely they would. Now, we wouldn't give up this farm. We would still keep it and operate it. But I bought 2 cows. They were white-faced heifers from Garner Hopkins. Imagine that. And I appropriately named them cow number 1 and cow number 2. And over time, they'd be just like big furry dogs. Yep. Follow me everywhere they would, nudge me along when I was going too slow. They would do that all the way to the end of us. Surely they would. But we had this place, we worked it for about 7 years. But I wanted to expand. I wanted bigger and a better farm. The wife was still agreeing, and that's something I'll bring up right now in a relationship. If it ain't your thing, don't say it is, because that'll only lead to problems later down the road. But anyway, we would eventually find a bigger, much larger place, not too far away, still in southern Tennessee. But instead of on top of the ridge, it would be down in the hollers, below the hills, and comprise the hills and hollers of southern Tennessee. I still have so many fond memories. Fishing on the pond, cutting woods in the wood lot. Yep, the turtles in the pond, the kids running across the fields, eating everything they wanted to, fishing with me for the very first time. Yep, there were a lot of memories. Far too many than I can share in this video. But there had become a time when I'd find another place, and my thought was to add on and still keep producing a wide variety of yummy vegetables for my community as well, right here. And maybe add to that as well on the newer, bigger farm. So now we're going to have to travel again to the second farm I bought. to add to this one too. Well, there you have it, friends and family. That was my first farm. And we're going to have to end this part 2 of my journey through my life, through the homes and properties I owned over the entirety of it. Hope you've enjoyed this part of the history of my life. But we're going to cut her short now because it's getting way too long. When we return in part 3, we will travel to a much larger and much different farm. Albeit, we would not sell this one because I had a plan. So hey, until the kitty crew, Cleo, Spooky Speedy, Mr. Gray, sometimes Heathcliff, Little Gracie and Little Bit too, see you on that next video. Y'all take care out there. Stay safe. Stay warm. 'Cause boy, it's been getting cold here. And it looks like the next 10 days are going to be rather frigid. And like always, may God bless each and every one of you. Hopefully, as you have blessed and will bless the others in your lives. Goodbye for now, my friends and family. Till we see you on that next video. Yeah, Gracie, a little bit, I'm coming. I know, it's dinner time. Yeah, it's never ending. I don't own cats. They own me. Oh, sorry folks. Later all.